Anyway. But the me is what's decaying. That's what's decaying. It's harder to prop it up. The guy across the street when I was a little kid, great guy, till he hit midlife. Even then, he was actually a great guy. He wasn't a great guy according to his wife anymore. And he bought this beautiful, gorgeous '56 Chevy. What they rode when he was in high school, right? And it was baby blue, white on the top. And the engine, he was out there and he would work on this thing. He'd get home from work and he'd work on it until like 11 o'clock at night. You'd see the lights, the garage open and the lights, and he'd be in there and tinkering away and trying to make his car and shine more and faster and bigger and better and reupholstery. And it was gorgeous. And he was miserable. He was trying to recreate himself. He remembered, gosh, I was at my peak at a certain point in my life, and this is what it looked like, so I'll try to recreate that. Now that may not be what most of you are doing. And that's certainly not what Bonnke was doing. And yet that self in those 9 years was inextricably disappearing out of his system. He was lucky that he survived it. It was a close call. The me was the thing that was striving. And it was a really close call. Was that me going to kill him before it ran out? It was like a race. You never know who's going to win the race. The me almost won the race. He almost killed himself. But then it collapsed. Now what he was saying after that is, you don't need to do that. Not only can you realize your true nature anytime, you can realize your true nature without the me disappearing out of your system. You can realize your true nature with the me very much in your system. You won't be able to probably sustain that realization, and you certainly probably won't be able to live that realization, but you can have it nonetheless. But part of the spirituality, not even through your practices, through your disciplines, that's quite beside the point. Because everybody in this room, the same thing's happening that happened to that guy Bonnke centuries ago. This me, from a very young point in life, is actually eroding. Most people are in a frantic reconstruction project at every moment. Right? Oh, I'm no longer that, I'll be this. I'm no longer that, I'll be this. That person left me, oh, quickly, I'll find another one. Whatever it is, quickly. Reassemble. Even using spirituality to reassemble. Well, I'm done trying to recreate myself in the world. I'm no longer a worldly person, but I'm going to create the biggest spiritual ego you've ever met this side of the Mississippi. So then we try to play that part for a while. Do we not? It's part of the way it goes. Changing personas like changing Halloween masks. But underneath it all, there is this movement. It's actually quiet. It's the inextricable disappearance of this verb of who we think we are. It just disappears. A lot of people in spirituality are trying to make it disappear. But that's actually just creating a new spiritual ego, right? I mean, who's purifying who? This isn't purification. This isn't anything to do with trying to be a good spiritual person. That's all an evasion of what I'm talking about. As far as I can see, most of spirituality serves the dream state much more than it serves the awakened state. Some of it serves the awakened state, and that's a nice thing. But you kind of got to pick through it like looking for needles in a haystack sometimes, you know, to find the jewels. So this isn't theory. It's not some spiritual philosophy or theology. If you just are quiet, you can feel this inextricable movement. It's not actually an upward movement any more than if there's a bucket of water and there's a hole in the bottom, it just drains down. And so we don't actually help the process along. We don't make it happen. It's more like you let it happen. Instead of chasing enlightenment, if you want to do anything, spend your time looking at each moment how you manage to unenlighten yourself. Forget about chasing enlightenment. That's like a dog chasing its tail so that it can become a dog. Right? If I just bite that thing right there, if I just catch up, then I will achieve this thing called dogness, which is enlightenment for a dog. How ridiculous, right? What's the point? It would be much better for the dog to sit around noticing how he inextricably continues to convince himself that he's not a dog. That would be much more useful than tail chasing, wouldn't you say? Spirituality is the same way. Don't worry about awakening. Don't worry about enlightenment. Don't worry about reality. Don't chase it and grasp it and try to imagine what it's like and all of that. If you're going to do anything, just look at any moment. How am I unenlightening myself right now? How is it that I'm pulling off the ultimate miracle of seeing separation where there isn't any? How is it that in the midst of a reality which is everything is at one, how am I actually pulling off this amazing magical feat of not perceiving it? You see? That would be much more relevant. And not only would it be much more relevant, it would be much more empowering. Because then you get to look at you, right? You don't have to chase around somebody else's silly little experience that they told you about, that you think you want. That's very disempowering. It's no fun. It's running around hoping that some wonderful thing will happen. Who wants to do that forever? Because the truth is just the opposite. That's the miracle of this all. See, to me, illusion is the miracle. Reality is not a miracle. How could it be? It's just reality. Everything's just one. And oneness is not a mystical experience, okay? It's not expanded consciousness. It's not those moments at the beach where your head like expands forever and you merge with the waves and you know what I mean. I don't know. Those are nice experiences, don't get me wrong. I like them as much as anybody else. But they're misleading because those get mixed in with what oneness is. And then oneness becomes sort of this mystical, magical fantasy. But when it starts to dawn on you, it's just the underlying sense of sameness. You just see through the lie, like, no, it's not actually true that we are inherently different, that anything is inherently different. Everything looks different. Of course it looks different. But when your denial of the underlying unity breaks down, you see, actually, it's the same thing somehow, appearing in many ways. It's not a mystical experience. It's practical, it's simple. See, Bhante was running around chasing something for 9 years. That's what made it difficult. He didn't wake up because he found what he was chasing. He woke up because his chasing burned itself out. It was purged out of his system. It was like imagine someone is jogging on a path, and you jog next to him, and you say, where are you going? Oh, I'm looking for rest. Why don't you stop? Because I haven't found rest yet. But you can find it if you stop. I've been running for so long, I don't actually know how to stop. I've forgotten all. If what you say is true, that's nice, but I don't even know how to stop my feet. But I'm sure if I keep running, I'll find rest. So the chap runs and runs and runs and runs and runs, right? If it was me, I would just say, hell, accelerate. Sprint. It's right there around the corner. You see? But get there, someone else is beating you. Right? And if it's not around that corner, run like hell to the next corner. Full speed. Right? Don't slow, no matter how tired you get, don't slow down. Why? Well, he might exhaust himself, right? That's what Bhante did. It's like he didn't find rest because he found rest as something out there. He found rest because he exhausted the seeking. And all of a sudden he stopped. It's like that. It's like someone running who's looking for rest and they get exhausted. And so they can't run. And so for a moment they sort of inextricably stop. And their body at that point knows, oh, rest. Their mind doesn't need to know rest. It's not important. But their body knows. And then, of course, their mind will laugh. Good Lord, this rest was actually, at any point I could have stopped. So you see, if you were a Bhante and you were like that person running, and then you rest, and then you finally exhausted yourself enough to stop, you might spend the rest of your life telling people, all that running around, it's not necessary. Rest, all you have to do is stop running. That's all. Enlightenment, just stop looking around the corner for it. All those things that we think are in our mind that we're chasing, stop chasing all that. If you're ready for this kind of message, then a stopping will happen quite spontaneously. Or it may be that something sees or senses this stopping as being frightening. Like, well, if I actually did that, good Lord, what would happen? Maybe nothing. And I've got to ensure that this thing called enlightenment happens, or awakening, or union with God, or whatever. I've got to make sure it happens. I can't just stop. And if you really start to feel what I'm saying, you'll realize the only reason this me keeps running and moving somewhere and attaining something is only one reason: fear. It's just afraid. Because everybody knows, everybody in this room is so intelligent. Everybody everywhere is so intelligent, much more intelligent than they give themselves credit. Everybody knows that if this... I want to make sure if you know what I'm speaking about. This momentum, you know what I mean by momentum? I must do this, I must do that, I must keep moving. Even if you're meditating, something must happen. I must stop my mind. That thought, I mustn't think that thought. That's a way of moving, keeping. Oh, I must understand that next thing. There's one more thing. I must understand it, you see? Because Sri Swami da-da-da said it, you see? And they were enlightened, and if I just understood this one. Adya, how do your teachings match up with all the other Don't get me wrong, I know it because I did it. You see, that's how I know it. I don't know it because I, sit on high and I, observe what everybody else is doing that I never succumb to. No, I know it because I was running around there, like marathon Olympic athlete kind of running, chasing, striving. So I speak from experience, not from any higher point. There isn't any higher point. But that thing that just moves, it just wants to. And it's just fear, Almost as if it didn't move, you'd die. Well, I'm sure you've all heard the old phrase, die before you die so you can truly live. It's a motif in almost every form of spirituality. Die before you die. And this gets misunderstood. People go around trying to sort of, slay the ego and all that. That's nonsense. That's living so that you don't have to die. Trying to kill your ego is the best way to sustain it, right? That's like somebody running it with a gun trying to shoot their feet off, thinking, well, that's what I need to do to stop running, It's ridiculous. And it's just new ways of running. But it's inside every human being, you see. It's just this movement, this energy that's always going somewhere. And if it's no longer totally obsessed with going places, what people call worldly things, then it goes to the last vestige, the last place to go. And that's spiritually going, right? Moving, progressing, pathing. Teachings, teachers, on and on and on and on and on and on. One of the greatest blessings I had that I never produced because it was just there was the one thing I look back, I go, God, I'm so glad that I didn't do that. Which was somehow I I can't even say the good enough sense. I don't know what it was, but the good enough sense to realize what I'm seeking is not going to come out there. There's nobody out there that's going to give me what I'm seeking. I don't know how I knew that. It literally never entered my mind. I only did when I started to teach do I realize, God, this is how so many people think, in a totally different way that they think. They come, they go, you're going to give it to me. When I first started to teach, I was scratching my head going, what's happening? What are they doing? You see, I had no context, you see, because the whole time I was in spirituality, I was young, in my 20s, didn't have spiritual friends really, didn't know any. Everybody was much older than I was. Didn't hang around in spiritual communities, just went in, got the teachings, took them home, applied them, checked out what happened. So it was a great blessing, actually, that it literally never occurred to me that somebody could give me what I was looking for. What a great blessing that was. What great good luck. It literally never crossed my mind. At least that kind of seeking was something that I didn't have to spin my wheels with. All sorts of other kinds of seeking, don't get me wrong, but not that one. You see, so when we come here together, if you're sensitive, which most of you are, you'll feel. It's not important what you think and what you try to grasp necessarily. You feel a slowing internally. Some of you. Maybe there's some that are so anxious to grasp, maybe I'll say the perfect thing, that they actually get revved up. That's okay. But actually the presence or the energy when we come together is something that's quite in the other direction. It's just if you're sensitive, it's just a place you can relax into. And it's really this energy that's always going somewhere, striving, looking for something. It's like a neutral energy in which it can sort of discharge itself. And there's a quietness in that. There's the taste of what it's like not to be on the move. We think we need that energy in this thing called life. As if our whole life would collapse without that kind of energy that's driving. Not only in life, you see, but even spiritually, if that makes sense. Someone could be, but I can't do that because I've got such a passionate desire to be in union with God. I can't possibly. Do you see? It's the same energy, though, as the person that says, I don't have time to stop. I've got to earn money to get that Ferrari I've always wanted. One looks different. One seems spiritual and the other seems not spiritual. But the energy, it's the same energy. It's just different avenues. And like the worldly person would think you're insane for letting go of that energy, the spiritual person would think you're equally insane. But that's the message. That's the invitation. I'm just saying, don't be deceived by the movement of that energy going elsewhere. Everything just can come back. Everything that's going elsewhere just comes back almost like the tide going back out to the ocean.